Today we're gonna do another First Brands to end it because today they gave us a bunch more numbers. I just want to go through those numbers. I'm gonna do another video today. I really want to talk about other things, in particular the US, Argentina, China, and soybean. So let's go through the numbers. So there's two articles in the Financial Times today. So First Brands is in bankruptcy, but they're doing a probe through the bankruptcy court where invoices were pledged multiple times, and you can see under the picture here, against inventory. Now you can stop and read this yourself, but the first paragraph says they've already uncovered that debt collateral may have been commingled. Good term, right? Commingled, not fraud. And they put in two independent managers who are expertise is off-balance sheet debt, including factoring facilities. Now, I kind of skipped down on this article, but this is a critical paragraph, this first one here. Moore wrote that First Brands restructuring advisors recently became aware that inventory backing a debt facility with a credit fund may have been commingled with collateral securing a separate bank loan. Okay, who's their restructuring advisors? That's Jeffries, okay? So this money that they found, it belongs to Evolution Credit Partner, or at least half of it, or however they're going to figure that out. We'll see. Now, everyone who's watched these videos, you know that when we started them last week, we said there were rumors they had $800 million in cash and $10 billion in liabilities. Well, look at the first paragraph, including the revelation that it only had $14 million of cash in its bank account at the start of last week, not yesterday, last week, okay? And it was exasperated when one of the banks seized much of its cash. Well, that bank turned out not to be Jeffries, but Florida-based Sun State Bank, which moved to secure bank accounts with $27 million in working capital, described as the last remaining liquidity of First Brands' U.S. subsidiaries. So we know that they have $5.9 billion in debt. Okay, that's stated, even though yesterday's Financial Times article said it looks like it's $8 billion. So make up your mind what you want. Now they say they find at least $9.3 billion, a higher figure than disclosed in the supply chain finance, but that does not include additional outstanding factoring facilities were estimated at $2.3 billion. So, figure it out. 5.9 or 8, 2.3 plus 9.3. And I think someone came out yesterday, they posted it in my X feed, that one of the banks said they believe it's between 15 and 20 billion. This would indicate it's around 19, 20 billion dollars. And they have 14 million in cash. So then they had another quick article in there saying who were the winners and the losers, okay? Well, the first one are their collateralized loan obligations, CLOs. Remember that? 2007-8, all right? This debt is broadly syndicated in a process overseen by banks. Think about this they're saying here. Broadly syndicated, that means, they brought it together and sold it to multiple people by banks, okay? That is Jeffries, okay? Rather than negotiate directly with the funds in the company. The CLOs report their holdings publicly and typically require credit agent ratings before the loans they buy, all right? And these vehicles, down in the bottom, last line, belong to PGIM, CIFC, and Blackstone. So these are the CLO users. But as we said the other day, Friday was a chaotic day of trading, and they said some CLOs have already sold their position. Those included that previously agreed to restrict their trading in order to learn private information about First Brands restructuring. Such trades can be facilitated through a big boy letter. What does that mean? Okay? So we're in private credit. It's not like the world where you get a prospectus and they have to tell you everything, and how the truth, okay? So what they do is they'll say, hey, look, and instead of going through that whole process, why don't you come to us? Well, you're a big boy. You manage a couple $1 billion. We'll give you a big boy letter, and we'll show you our books, but then you can't sell. So what they're saying here is, even though they signed a big boy letter and they signed basically restricting their ability to sell, they sold on Friday. And PGIM and CIFC declined to comment, and Blackstone confirmed it's out. probably Friday, but that's all they care about. So this is what interests me, okay? So look, private credit fund provided much of the financing for this, all right? And they did not clearly disclose how much of it had outstanding and factoring facilities, which allowed companies to sell outstanding company invoices to banks or investors in return for upfront cash. The group recently gave more details to potential lenders. This showed it had 2.3 billion in factored customer invoices, all right? And this was equivalent to more than 70% of their sales. And just to show how good they were at financial engineering, it also shows they have another 682 million in supply chain financing, a technique called reverse factoring, under which a lender pays a supplier's bills up front and then collects the money from the company later. Only in America. So it does say, look, this could further tarnish the image of Jefferies. It seemed Jeffrey brought out a deal about 6 months ago. It was big, and they jammed it through, and within a couple months, the whole thing fell apart, and now it's trading at less than 40 cents on the dollar, and it was a big, big deal. So Jefferies took a reputational hit on that. This is not going to help, all right? And they were trying to get through this $6 billion loan when the wheels came off the offering, because they said, hey, we want more information on this invoice factoring and other elements of its accounting, because there's at least 3 different accounting lending strategies that they're using. And again, here's the second paragraph. Many of First Brand's loan investors were not aware that an investment unit of Jefferies also provided more opaque financing to the auto parts company linked to customer invoices. And so Jefferies, along with 3 other creditors to First Brand invoice factoring facilities, is listed as an unsecured creditor with a contingent, unliquidated, or disputed claim, indicating the claim could face difficulties. Jefferies declined to comment. So what does this mean to us, all right? Well, the first thing is, if you don't think everybody's running around in the background the last 5 days, going in through their invoice factoring financing from all the other firms, do not think First Brand is the only one. We're not saying that other firms are creating or doing fraud, but you know what? We're obviously going to find out. And this means that all these BPNL companies, buy now, pay later, all these things are going to come under heavier scrutiny than they did in the past. And I think that in the end, this is going to not only affect Jefferies' reputation in a negative way, I also believe that it's going to affect their balance sheet. And there's 2 reasons for that. One, when you're the banker of this type of business and these issues are coming along, you make sure those issues are done, and the way you do that is you buy a piece of them, or sometimes all of them. We don't know. We're going to find out. But I would say Jefferies is holding paper. It just makes common sense. Could be wrong, but I think they do, okay? Then you're going to have all these firms saying, how did you not know? You had much more information than we did, blah, 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 and there's going to be lawsuits all over this thing. So I would say right now, they have 14 million in cash, and they have, 19 point something billion in liabilities at this time. And you saw yesterday, they estimated between 10 and 50 billion, so let's figure out what's going to happen. So tell me in the comments, let's talk about financial engineering, and thanks for listening, and like and follow.